This is Reimagining the Contact Center. I'm Marc Bernstein, and today I'm interviewing Ricardo Herreros-Symons, the Chief Strategy Officer at Speechmatics. This interview was one of the interviews where I feel like the progress AI is making surprised me. Like, I didn't realize some of these technologies were as far as along as they are. We go exactly into how they're building really advanced acoustic models that get the tone of voice just right and get the pacing just right and get the exchanges between speakers just right. Super, super cool. Really love this interview. Hope you do too. And everybody, this is Ricardo Herreros-Symons, the Chief Strategy Officer at Speechmatics. Ricardo, hey, good to meet you.
Hey, lovely to meet you too, Mark. How are things?
Really good. Really good. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited for today's conversation. You guys have an incredible brand in the speech space and in the contact center space. So I'd love to start off by getting your thoughts. What's happening in contact center AI right now? Like, if you were trying to explain this to someone who just popped into this space and said, I hear there's a lot of commotion going on, what would you say? What's happening in contact center AI?
I'd say contact center AI is probably at the forefront of the AI wave that is going on right now. As in, we've gone from a world where sort of voice enabled was sort of a nice to have to where it is absolutely crucial in every way possible. And I think in some areas it's just like if you look at your English by easy accent, I guess sort of more commonly spoken accented stuff. Where you upload an audio file and then sort of download it afterwards. That's sort of commoditizing quite fast as a space. And so we're starting to see people wanting to drive the edge of what they're doing by getting either sort of the longer range of languages, the sort of the different accented English conversations, the multi-language conversations, but more importantly, it's about the drive to live, the drive, and that's the drive to sort of real time. So where can you enable things to have real-time insights, real-time coaching, real-time everything, but real-time agents, right? Agents that don't need to have a human involved to begin with. Can agents handle the first 10 minutes of an interaction or 80% of your interactions or your easier interactions? It's a space that is moving incredibly fast. And from speaking to various different leaders in the industry, it's clear that everyone is scrambling to work out what they can get in as quickly as possible. I'd say the technology is actually probably further ahead than some people think, but obviously there is a sales motion and an adoption motion that needs to happen. And I reckon this time next year, we will be living in a very different world.
Where do you think the technology is further ahead that it would surprise people?
I think people don't realize, and hopefully I can show you sort of during this show, how good a conversation can be with something that isn't real, how natural and how seamless that can feel. For me, there's just an ability to automate the less interesting and the sort of the higher cost part of contact center operations in a way that means we can really focus on getting to the heart of what the customer really cares about, which is those edge cases, those niche scenarios, those things where you really need to have deep knowledge to be able to solve them.
How intelligent do you think these things are? Like, I think we used to say, well, it's just predicting the next word and, it's not really intelligent. It's just a machine. And I think we're now starting to say, maybe there's something in there. So what is your take? Like, how intelligent are these things?
So if you're looking at the LLMs themselves, right? So that there's the LLMs up until the last couple of months or so were sort of did very well, sort of passing, I don't know, high school maths, sort of maybe some kind of university type math stuff. But there is a newer generation coming that can compute with a breadth and to a depth that is even beyond what we could use in most situations, right? And I don't actually think that kind of stuff's going to come into the contact center world necessarily. I think that's more sort of on the research and push towards deeper intelligence or deeper real intelligence motion. But what I do think is that we have an ability now to upskill to a certain level of quality faster than a human can do it, right? As in, you could create an agent that just by polling an LLM, and doesn't even need to be connected to the internet, that is going to be better at the job on day one than a lot of humans would be on day one because their learning period is going to be longer than that.
I really like the example you gave of, the advanced mathematics and how that's improving and how it isn't necessarily even practical to use that in a contact center environment. I think it almost makes people feel like it's not intelligent because it's so intelligent. O1 Preview did this. They released this model, and basically one of the example use cases they showed is how for ultra rare diseases that I think the example was under 100 incidents nationwide per year. It might have been actually like under 10. But so for ultra rare diseases, how can you look at the genome and figure out like what the possible causes of these diseases might be? And I think almost that looks so smart. We're like, yeah, that's just a computer. But we don't realize, no, it's arriving at that answer using neural nets, which literally were made to try to replicate the way that brains do computing. Like, do you think we're going to take these really advanced technologies and bring them down into contact center, or are we just never going to need to get there?
So I'd say that sort of the O1 stuff, the related sort of capabilities there, that's the kind of, I've got a lot of friends who work at Anthropic, and they are incredibly excited about the art of the possible there. But it takes a long time to do the computations. It's incredibly expensive, relatively speaking, to do those computations. So I don't think necessarily on the thinking front. I always think about sort of the conversational agent as sort of the ears, the mouth, and the brain, right? And I think on the thinking front, in terms of working out what to say, I don't think that's where we're going to need to see the next push in terms of computational capability. I think it's going to be more around the naturalistic reaction, the knowing when to speak, how not to be annoying when you're speaking. It's the key bit. Don't interrupt people, don't cross talk them, get the sort of the words that are out of vocabulary. So I think it's going to have, when I think about and I like to refer to it as sort of the speech first Turing test, or the speech driven Turing test, the ability to pick up a phone to somebody or pick up a phone to something and not know that it's not a human being. I think there's going to be the advances there are the ones that are going to have the biggest impact, rather than the absolute latest in LLM technology. Obviously, what we've seen with all the LLM technology is that it comes out, it gets cheaper, it gets more efficient, and obviously that will trail down. But we don't need it doing sort of genome sequencing for 99% or 99.99% of our use cases at this period in time.
Yeah, so let's go into like naturalness of conversation and how good these things are getting. What are the next frontiers that these technologies need to chip away at when it comes to natural sounding conversation?
Obviously, you start on the input side, on the audio side, making sure you understood what was said as effectively as possible. And the key there is being able to understand it effectively, but also as quickly as possible as well. Because if you take 5 seconds to have the most perfect response, the other person on the other end is not gonna want to integrate with you. So we talk about sort of the speed accuracy curve. So how good accuracy can you get for as low latency as possible? And that low latency, right, that can be down to sort of 600, 700 milliseconds, because you're almost putting more into the acoustic side of the conversation rather than the language modeling side. And by language modeling, I don't mean LLM in terms of the LLMs as we talk about now, but the language modeling side in terms of traditional speech. Or if I start a song or something like that, your brain's guessing what the next word should be. Whereas what we're trying to do now is give more time for the LLMs to think. So get a higher quality understanding, so the LLM can think for a bit longer to give a more reasoned and a more appropriate response, whilst also deciding whether it wants to respond, right? Because if I can give you high quality speech rec at 0.6 seconds, then that means you can go, okay, I think this is the right response, but let me just check to see if the person said anything else, or if they've gone or should I reply? Should I reply? No. Okay, great. And actually, from all the context I've built up, I've got the best possible response here. So that's one side. And then on the other side, it's about getting a really natural sounding text to speech as well. So that uncanny valley type area where and OpenAI's sort of latest developments here have been very, very impressive on that front. I'd say sort of between advanced voice mode and 11 labs, you see the ability to speed up and slow down, to put emotion into the speech as it comes out. And that's where a lot of sort of focus has been going on recently as well. So it's taking each part of that three chain interaction and making it as natural as possible. You've also got the glue that sort of goes in between them, the knowing when to respond and how to respond, which is a key bit. And then the way we're looking at things as well is not just sort of what was said, but how it was said and who said it. So being able to say, right, I know we've got 4 different speakers in this situation. I know that these speakers are named that. I've remembered their voice from a previous conversation. Actually, I'm running as a personal assistant right now, so I'm only going to listen to this one person, and everyone else I'm going to ignore them. Even though I can transcribe or understand what they're saying, I'm choosing not to respond. So again, more naturalness, right? Because if somebody started talking in your garden, started shouting questions at you, well, not at you, but to somebody else, I assume you'd ignore them, right? Because you're choosing to focus on my voice at this point in time. So there's so many little bits in the chain of the conversation where you can increase the sort of the naturalness and seamlessness of what's going on.
Wow. What this makes me think is I'm able to do a lot of research on what people are building, by talking to executives and by looking, at headlines. But it doesn't always feel real. And you always kind of look at it and you go, man, there's billions and billions of dollars going into space. I'm reading these headlines. And then honestly, when I heard you explain it, I'm like, this is where the billions are going. This is where it's going. And it's like chipping away at all of these very important problems, like even the knowing when to respond. As you were saying that, I was like, man, when OpenAI did their first 4.0 demo, that was one of the things that I think kind of at least caught me off guard is, they kept having like, okay, thank you, 4.0, please stop, or the 4.0 would respond while the person was still talking because they processed the request too quickly. And I can imagine in the contact center space, as an example, that could be something that particularly annoys people if they feel like AI is cutting them off. If AI sides on the patient side and sides on even a little longer latency in order to prevent interrupting people, I bet that's probably the right type of balance. But it just goes to show like how nuanced all of these engineering questions are to really get it right.
And the key bit to that is that you need, in a weird way, you need really low latency on the speech to know not to interrupt too soon otherwise. So humans tend to respond to each other at roughly 1.2 seconds latency, but you want the speech down below that on the latency so it can decide not to do the interruption. That's the key bit. It's knowing when not to speak, as well as when to speak.
1.2 seconds leaves a lot of room to get this right. If we're at, 0.6 seconds latency, and is that in going from utterance to reply, or is that from utterance to like the right words, or from utterance to the acoustic model? Like what is in that 0.6? Because that leaves a whole nother 0.6 of margin that gives us a lot of room to play with and get this technology right.
The way we do conversational AI is we have the sort of the 3 phases, which is the speech to text going in, and that's at the 0.6 to 0.7 seconds. The LLM, which will be the quickest responses I've seen, sort of around half a second, and then the text to speech, which honestly, at this day and age, text to speech is a little bit wild west, because if a lot of people are using it at the same time, that can certainly increase. But we aim for the latency to err on the side, and we pad it sometimes as well. So for us, when we look at this for driving enterprise and business in particular, you need to give people the tools to be able to sort of say what kind of use case they are, what kind of use case that they're going towards. Because in some, you want really snappy responses, right? Question and answer, really good. In others, you're having a more thoughtful conversation. You want the ability to be able to pad out a conversation a bit longer. And so that's also sort of one of the other, I guess, interesting drives in the industry, is sort of the difference between sort of a cascaded approach to conversational AI, where one person, sort of where you have the speech model, you have the LLM, you have the text to speech, and you have extra information going beyond that, just beyond the words. So you have what we call paralinguistic models, which is essentially beyond the words. So whether that's emotion or emphasis or anything like that, and that is also fed through, which could then be fed through to the text to speech as well. But then there's that versus the sort of one model to rule them all, which you'll have seen in a couple of examples too, which is the idea where you have this all running completely within a single model. But the issue with that is you can't customize it for your different use cases. You can't sort of swap out what might be the advances in each specific area. You can't train it to be specific to something. The models get bigger and therefore generally a bit more inefficient. And at this point in time, it might change one day, but at this point in time, it definitely feels that for enterprise specifically, the ability to have a cascaded model with modules that you can swap in and out and get to really intelligently work together is the best way forward.
And then I'm curious on like, so I noticed, the Agentforce demo, and of course that's Salesforce. And I think if I remember the number correctly, they have 800 million invested in that area. And the Agentforce demo obviously was super awesome. I think maybe the coolest thing that truly we saw from that is the ability to do actioning within the system. But one of the things that kind of stuck out to me is I was like, I wonder why they don't use a little bit more of a natural voice. Like, can't you just like find the person at Salesforce who has the sexiest voice and be like, hey, can we deep fake you for 30 seconds? Is it a latency issue? Is it just that it takes more computational power, or, like what is preventing folks from, when you hear these voice bots, them being like really, really great aesthetic voices?
It's definitely more expensive to do so. There's a philosophical question as to whether people want to hear something they don't know if it's real or not. I've definitely spoken to a few people who would rather know that they're speaking to a machine because it gives them a little bit more comfort and a little bit more certainty. But there's also just simply the case, I'd say, like the two leaders on the text-to-speech side at the moment are, I would say, are OpenAI and 11 Labs, and but they are also by far the most expensive sort of text-to-speech options to use out there. For really high volume, it just doesn't scale efficiently. And again, those will come down, but naturalness as well. I mean, other challenges is the fact that if to get voice data, it's something that the acting community and sort of the community in general is becoming much more cautious about. Obviously, we have the whole Sky voice from OpenAI with Scarlett Johansson sort of and the issues that caused. But I know a lot of places sort of are now demanding a 20% of all future revenues generated from a voice that we use to create a text to speech, and obviously 20% of all future revenues. That could be insane for some people. So I think there's 3 to 4 reasons that would drive that specifically. And again, it comes down to efficiency, and also where you want to set your models. There's also worlds where you want things to, the ideal world, you want your engines to be running on your users' hardware. Because if you do that, you've got no cloud costs. It's absolutely fantastic. And we've definitely found that with a few people we've worked with, that the biggest thing for them was, can you get this running on our tin, on laptops, on phones? Because instead of looking at $100 million speech bill, they can have it for far cheaper than that.
Can you tell us, like, what is Speechmatics building, and what are the sort of products you guys have?
Sure. So Speechmatics is tradition. I mean, we've been doing speech recognition. It's the clues in the name, right? For a long time, commercialized in 2014, rolled out with a batch sort of upload download system to begin with, involved that into do more languages, then sort of rolling into real time specifically. We put a lot of focus into sort of self-supervised pre-training of our models, and our mantra has always been, can we get the most accurate model possible that understands as many voices as possible and that is as general as possible as well? We said we try and shy away from sort of having a specific medical dictionary or a contact center, a finance dictionary or whatever it might be. We say, you know what, we want something that can be used by as horizontally by as many different people to create a great experience. Our differentiators lie in the fact that our engine is built to be real-time first. So we think about the problem of real-time before we think about the problem of batch, because we know that is the harder problem to solve. We then the way we build it is we have this pre-training layer where we essentially lay on unlabeled audio. So to build a speech model, normally you need labeled audio, which is audio and transcript. Instead, what we do is we take millions of hours of unlabeled audio, just audio people speaking in any language, and it's like sending your speech recognition system on a world tour. It goes and listens to all the languages and goes, oh, okay, that's what that sounds like. That's what that sounds like. I'm starting to understand how speech is represented. And then that representation model, we can then train with a much smaller amount of labeled data to create very high accurate engines, which are very noise robust, very good on different accents, but with roughly anything between 10 and 50 times less training data than others, which means you can make them more efficient, make them smaller, et cetera, et cetera. So that's taken Speechmatics to where we are right now. And we've seen a huge amount of growth, especially in our real-time business. whether it be for sort of like media captioning, live sports, that sort of thing, but also driving in the contact center. But we realized as well, sort of 6-12 months ago, that there was this massive opportunity to get, if you have the best in class real-time speech recognition, then that means you have the ability to sit at the foundation of the best in class conversational AI. So we've been working on what we've called Flow, which is our sort of conversational AI over the last, say, 6-12 months, which say released as a sort of a beta API in mid-October, and sort of will be rolling out fully with customers already paying for it. It's great when you've got customers paying for something that's not really been released yet. And that's all about creating, again, a generic conversational AI with a really seamless, natural feel to it that can be used across. I think we've identified 24 different use cases. We'll narrow that down, but at the moment, sort of it is really polyvalent in terms of its capacity to do that. I can demo it to you a bit later on as well if that's of interest. But the idea being, let's have a really natural conversation with AI, and you can plug it in anywhere, whether it's robots, in car, contact center, sort of patient healthcare, support agents, filling in Salesforce boxes for you after a call. The lot can be achieved.
Your team was kind of emphasizing the touchless aspect of it. And what's really interesting about that is if you kind of looked at the contact center space, even call it maybe a year ago, maybe more, the headlines and things people were asking is voice dying? And now it seems like that's almost entirely flipped, where people will say, can you do everything with just voice? So I'd love to, and as you kind of pull up, the Flow demo, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, is there a resurgence in voice right now happening, or is it just almost a correction when people perhaps went too far on text and chat mediums, and now it's hitting a healthy balance? What do you think?
It became clear that voice was going to have to be at the forefront of every interaction going forwards, and the technology has caught up to be able to do that. I think we saw the first bit of the resurgence of the interest in voice and the fact that it could be used to generate data for LLMs, because there became this war. It's like, we need more text, we need more text, we need more text, we need text that is natural, and you know what, we need business text. And most business text is not what is said on Wikipedia. It's not sort of the random stuff that you trawl websites for to create your LLMs, but actually a lot of it's these natural kind of conversations. So speech to text, voice was great for creating that. But now it's sort of, now that the real-time capability has moved on, it's now got to the next level, which is even more exciting. So what I'm going to show you here, this is our app Flow, and I'm just going to start talking. I'll make sure I've sort of got everything loud enough, and I'll give you a quick demo. Humphrey, can you just introduce yourself quickly, please?
Hello, Ricardo. I'm Humphrey, your friendly British brain box. I'm here to chat, answer questions, and help out with whatever you need. How can I assist you today?
Cool. So yeah, I'm just doing a quick demo for my friend here, Marc. And what I was hoping to do was, I'd like you to pretend to be a contact center agent from Garmin, so like a support agent. And I'm going to ring in, pretend that my watch is broken, and I'd just like you to act as if you're the agent and see if we can get to a resolution on what went wrong.
Right, Ricardo. I'm ready to step into the shoes of a Garmin support agent. Go ahead and give me a ring with your issue, and we'll see if we can sort it out.
So I woke up this morning, tried to turn on my watch. I was late because my alarm didn't work, but yeah, the watch didn't turn on. Not sure what to do.
Oh dear, that sounds quite frustrating. Let's see if we can get that sorted out for you. First, have you tried charging the watch to make sure it's not a battery issue? Sometimes it just needs a bit of a power boost.
Yeah, I wouldn't be calling you if I hadn't tried charging the watch. I've definitely tried that. That didn't work.
Ah, fair enough. I'm glad you've already tried that. Let's try a soft reset. You can do this by holding down the power button for about 15 seconds. This often helps with unresponsive devices. Let me know if that does the trick.
I've tried that, but the battery's dead anyway, so I'm not sure if that would work.
Got it. If the battery's not holding a charge, it might be a deeper issue. I think the best step now is to check if your watch is still under warranty. If it is, we can arrange for a repair or replacement. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, it is under a warranty at the moment. And one thing that did come up actually is I did go diving with it the other day. Would that have caused any issues?
Diving could definitely be a factor. especially if the watch isn't rated for those depths. It might have affected the internal components. I'll recommend mentioning this when you contact the warranty service, as it could help them pinpoint the issue. Let's get that sorted for you.
Okay, that's great. Thanks a lot. And just to give me an idea, sort of, I might get a new one anyway, but I'd be interested in getting sort of like a new Forerunner. Do you know sort of like roughly what the prices are for, let's say, a Forerunner 735 XT?
Forerunner 735 XT is a popular choice for athletes. The price can vary, but you're looking at roughly around £250 to £300, depending on where you shop and any deals available. It's a solid choice if you're considering an upgrade.
Okay, awesome stuff. That's enough. You can go into passive mode now whilst we continue our podcast.
Going into passive mode now.
There we go.
That was super cool. That was super cool. And I'll kind of poke on one awesome detail I noticed, rather than the big picture of you're talking to a machine that's like immediately assuming the personality of a Garmin support agent and actually like asking you a whole bunch of troubleshooting steps and handling the fact that you're kind of frustrated and just pivoting and keep going. That's like obviously the high level here. I love how it would pause to take a breath. Like it has, it's simulating a breath. You'd hear him like breathe in like that. And I was like, man, that's the level these things are getting at.
Well, it takes you back to that moment in the film Her, doesn't it? Where sort of he's asking Scarlett Johansson sort of why she's sighing, and sort of why are you sighing? Why are you taking a breath? And it's like, well, it just feels like I should. It's natural, right? And so that is the step on the path to the speech first Turing test.
I'd love your thoughts on what use cases will have these totally automated AI agents and what use cases won't in the near term, the next few years.
I think there's going to be, one area that we hadn't really thought of, but only recently came up. There's definitely some training capability from the start. If you're able to add in all of the information to the LLM specifically for your business, whatever they do, then you can do question and answer role play training on how to actually do this. You can simulate the calls themselves. Actually becoming a good sales agent, part of the route to get there could be interacting with a conversational AI. Obviously, this could also handle the first 10, 20 minutes of certain calls, or it's dealing with the 80% or the 50% or whatever number it is of the easier calls to handle with, and then you can escalate that to a human where you need to. Obviously, this has been covered off a little bit by chatbots as well right now, but the fact that you can do this for people who aren't necessarily comfortable with doing that makes a big difference. You can also roll automatic translation into what you're doing too, so you can start to make contact center agents able to deal with customers across lots of different geographies, across different languages. We've got a bilingual version of what I just showed you there as well, which I was using a sort of a Spanish tutor earlier on, but likewise, imagine sort of a lot of contact centers for the Americas being able to take calls in both languages, switch from one to another. It's going to be able to do that too. So to be honest, you could sit down and as I say, we've come up with 24 big use cases, but everything from form filling to post call sort of actions, next steps, and filling in Salesforce, which my word, wouldn't a lot of people love to have. Imagine filling in MedPick automatically without having to actually do that. But I think, yeah, for me, the big one will be the agent that is handling the bulk of the calls as they come in, and not in sort of the really painful historical way where it's sort of, can you say your name? It's like, Ricardo. It's like, did you say Domino? It's like, no, I said Ricardo. And sort of like, where do you live? And sort of then alphanumerically just not understanding anything.
Yes.
It's so much more natural that as world literacy rates are also, I think they've peaked. I think I've seen some studies saying that fewer people are going to be able to speak. I'd be able to read and write. This just opens up support and help to an even wider community.
I wonder if this is going to cover every use case. Because I'll tell you, I was surprised at how quickly, just in hearing you guys talk, I became comfortable with it as a listener, right? And I think that's maybe one of the big concerns or limitations is, okay, how soon will people become comfortable with it? Either technology's here and it can do everything. How soon will they be like, you know what, fine, I'll have a back and forth conversation with an AI. And it's funny that as a listener, hearing you guys have that conversation, I was like, Yeah, that seems like something I would do. Are we going to cover the entire contact center space with this technology, you think?
I think there'll always be the odd edge case, but I think for the 80-20 rule, certainly. And the naturalness thing is definitely hits home. My girlfriend is very jealous of our conversational AI. I talk to it far too much, apparently. He's not allowed at dinner tables because so he interrupts. So just drives attention away from her. So the naturalness, I think, is it's here to stay.
Where do you think AI overall is going in the next 3 years? We zoom out.
Again, I was speaking to some friends about this recently. LLMs came along, and everybody was like, "It's going to transform the workplace. The workplace is going to be transformed." And no doubt, in some industries, it has made a difference. It means that people are having to make decisions slightly faster. And I think, especially sort of in the content creation and content writing industries, it's having an effect right now. I know that people within our sales force, right, who might not have English as a first language, they run everything through a large language model before they send an email, and they're sending sort of grammatically perfect emails immediately there, and that makes a big difference then. But I feel like the floodgates have not opened yet. I think the technology is pretty much there, but I now think it's a cultural and a commercial implementation, not problem, but that is going to be what holds it back. What holds it back? I think we'll be looking at the pace of change is going to increase, but not because the pace of change, the technology is increasing, but because the adoption is going to be increasing. And I'd say that timeline is within the next 12 to 24 months. The workplace then will look different to how it does now.
Ricardo, this was so fun. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
No problem. Really enjoyed it as well.